Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Chocolate Decadence. That's right, if the person you're trying to seduce this Valentine's Day is a chocoholic, you may want to consider this classic 1980s dessert. And by the way, if you don't remember the 80s because you're too young, or you don't remember the 80s because of the 80s, it was a decade known for greed, decadence, and excess. And there's no other dessert recipe that typifies those things as much as this chocolate decadence. So let's throw on some leg warmers, and possibly a members only jacket if you're chilly, and let's get started. And for this, we'll begin with one of the last things we need, a buttered and floured 9-inch pan. Just take your pan and smear in a light coating of butter. And once you've done that, we're going to dust that with flour, and we'll give that a shake and kind of roll it around until the flour coats the inside, and then just tap out the excess, and your pan is prepped. And I'm pretty sure you could figure out a way to do that without making such a huge mess. But that's okay because I have one of these, a bench scraper, which makes cleaning up something like this a lot easier. So I recommend you get one of those. But anyway, I'm going to clean that up. We'll also clean up our pan a little bit. And by the way, does it look like that because I didn't spread my butter that evenly? Yes, it does. But anyway, that's it. Our pan's prepped, and we will set that aside while we make our batter, which is going to start with butter. Just a little bit. I'm going to add about 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter to a mixing bowl, to which we're going to add a whole bunch of chocolate. And not just any chocolate. I want you to use semi-sweet chocolate. And just in case you're wondering, this is 62% cacao. I guess I could have just mentioned that in the ingredient list, but I really wanted to say cacao. And what we'll do is we'll take a whole bunch of that and chop it or break it up into the bowl. If you want to cut it up with a knife, go ahead. If you want to pound it with a mallet and break it up like that, go ahead. But I just like to break it up with my fingers, mostly because I really enjoy the cleanup. And once that's set, we'll head over to the stove and place this bowl on top of a double boiler. So what you want to do is put about an inch or two of water in a saucepan, bring it to a simmer, then turn your heat down to the lowest setting you have, and we'll place our bowl of butter and chocolate on top, where it will slowly and safely melt. And once it does, we'll simply stir it together, which is what I started to do here. But then I realized not all the chocolate was melted yet. So I went back a couple minutes later, at which point I was able to stir it together. And for my money, stirring together melted chocolate and butter is one of the most beautiful food scenes of all time. Check it out. So pretty. And then once that's stirred together, we're just going to turn off the heat and leave it there until we've prepared our egg mixture, which is the next step and requires 5 whole eggs and not cold eggs. So I guess you could leave them out at room temperature, but what I like to do is just let them sit in warm water for about 20 minutes, at which point they're going to be much more beatable. And then what we'll do is we'll take a large bowl, the bigger the better, and we'll dump in some white sugar, not too much, and we'll add our eggs, and we'll take a whisk, and we will bust those eggs right in the yolks, and we will start to beat them. And we will continue to beat them until we have a very pale, very, very, very thick mixture. And by the way, this step is super easy if you have an electric mixer, which I do. But I thought I'd take one for the team and show you that you can do this by hand. But it is going to take a while, so fair warning. As most of you know, I'm in incredible shape and freakishly strong. And even with that, this took me about 10 minutes to do. But anyway, we're going to keep whisking that until it gets super, super thick, at which point we're going to add a couple more things. We're going to do a very, very tiny shake of cayenne. As you know, a little bit of that can make chocolate taste chocolatier, as does the next ingredient, a super, super, super tiny pinch of salt. And I mean barely a pinch, just a tiny bit of salt. And then we're also going to sift in a little bit of flour. Not too much, just over a tablespoon. So while you hear chocolate decadence referred to as a flourless chocolate cake, it actually does have a little bit of flour. And we'll take our whisk and we'll stir that in. And then once that's set, it's time to mix it with our chocolate. So let's go ahead and take our bowl of chocolate and butter. And what we're going to do is we're going to pour in about a quarter of our egg mixture to lighten this up. Just pour it in and mix it in until it looks like chocolate again. And hold on one second here. That little drip is totally bugging me. That's better. Okay, so like I said, we're going to mix in about a quarter of our egg mixture. And then we're going to go ahead and add that mixture back into our bowl of eggs and fold it all together. And I say fold, but it's really more of a stir. Okay, so don't think we're making a souffle here. You're not going to end up with a super light, airy mixture like you would if we were working with a true meringue. But we do want to mix this as gently as possible. So as you can see, I'm kind of folding, kind of stirring, bringing stuff from the bottom up over the top when possible. And what you're going to end up with is a very, very light for its size batter. And it really should look something like this. And once our chocolate and egg mixtures have been incorporated together, we will carefully transfer that into our prepared pan, and we'll even that out, and that's pretty much ready for the oven. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it the old shake-a, but no tappa. Just give it a little shake to make sure things are evened out, at which point we will transfer that into the center of a 425-degree oven for exactly 14 to 15 minutes. And 14 or 15 minutes later, it will look like this. Okay, that surface will be just barely set. If you give it a little shake, you won't see any waves of chocolate. It may wiggle or jiggle slightly, but it will not look soupy. And there's really not a way to test it by poking, like we can with other recipes. But the good news is 14 to 15 minutes will be perfect. And at this point, I have some terrible news for you. You can't eat this yet. This cake is not good warm. It's not even good room temperature. What we have to do is let this cool to room temp before wrapping and refrigerating or freezing thoroughly. All right, so just make sure it's very, very, very cold before you try to cut it. But once it is, you're ready to slice a piece and serve it on top of this fresh raspberry sauce, the mandatory and only approved sauce to pair with this cake. And by the way, I'm happy to announce that's going to be the next video. So I'm going to show you how to make that. And you're going to be glad because it's so delicious and so versatile. So we're going to cover our chilled dessert plate with our raspberry sauce and top it with a piece of our now very cold chocolate decadence. And of course, to add to the visual drama, we will dust it with a little bit of powdered sugar, which I was doing way too slowly, so I edited. And then for a final touch, we'll add a few fresh raspberries. And that is one beautiful and pretty dramatic looking dessert. And of course, depending on the personality of your Valentine, you could go a little more conservative and just do like a pool of sauce in the middle of the plate. But that's up to you. You are the Ronald Reagan of what to put your chocolate cake on. But anyway, gorgeous appearances aside, let's go in for a taste. And they do not call this chocolate decadence for nothing. This is by far the richest, most intense, most decadent chocolate cake of all time. I would describe it as kind of a compressed, super rich chocolate custard, which is why you have to have this raspberry sauce. I mean, we really need that tartness, that acidity from the berries to cut through all this. That's what makes this work. And you want it to work, don't you? So like I said, stay tuned. I'm going to show you that sauce next. So whether you're trying to impress your Valentine or just nostalgic for the 80s and want to get your Gordon Gekko on, I really hope you give this amazingly intense chocolate cake a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.